Welcome to week 2 of our month of guests on the Secondary Science Simplified podcast. And I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest. He is a wealth of creativity and wisdom. I honestly was just fascinated by his brain, and I was scribbling notes the whole time we chatted. I think it's important to talk to teachers who are different from me so that you all get to hear a variety of perspectives and experiences. And Brennan Koch is exactly that in the best of ways. Brennan is a 25-year science teaching veteran who also owns and operates stoichdecks. Stoichdecks makes curriculum-centric games designed to create a deep thinking and engaged classroom. When he isn't teaching science, he is coaching the National Science Bowl team or the track team. In this episode, y'all, we cover so much. We talk about the 18 different preps he has taught in the last 25 years. We talk about specific tips for teaching all levels of chemistry, which has been the main focus in his career, and so many great AP teaching tips as he currently teaches both AP biology and AP chemistry. He shares how he creates a culture of striving in his classroom, how he uses lab finals to assess labs and minimize the amount he has to grade on labs, and one way he maintains boundaries in order to have work-life balance. One of my favorite things he shared was this: I could not be present at home if my work was present at home. Lastly, he shares how he uses games in his classroom. I thought his entire perspective on this was just so unique and fascinating. He admits that his own competitive nature started this, but that, and I quote, different conversations happen when something is on the line in regards to his students playing games. Not only that, but I'm so excited. He shared with me so that I can share with you the very first ever It's Not Rocket Science and Secondary Science Simplified coupon code for listeners. Never have I ever had a coupon code to share with you all from someone else, and he gave me one, and I'm so excited for you to have it. I get zero kickback, by the way. I'm just tickled to get to share it with you. And I'll share it throughout the episode. He'll share it, and I'll share it again at the end, but it's code ROCKET for 20% off at stoichdecks.com. And again, I'll link that in the show notes for you so you don't miss it. Okay. I'm going to stop gabbing and let you get to my conversation with Brennan Koch of Stoichdecks. This is Secondary Science Simplified, a podcast for secondary science teachers who want to engage their students and simplify their lives. I'm Rebecca Joyner from It's Not Rocket Science. As a high school science teacher turned curriculum writer, I am passionate about helping other science teachers love their jobs, serve their students, and do it all in only 40 hours a week. Are you ready to rock the time you spend in your classroom and actually have a life outside of it? You are in the right place, teacher friend. Let's get to today's episode. Hi, Brennan. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you on. You've been teaching for 25 years, which is just such an accomplishment. So I would just love to start off our conversation just hearing, what has allowed you to last in this career. I feel like there can be a lot of negativity, especially in these post-COVID years around education and teachers being really drained. So what has kept you going?
Yeah, 25 years, that just makes me sound like an old man. But I was thinking about that, and I decided that the thing that allows me to keep going is connecting to kids. Because I never wanted to be a science teacher. Like, that's not the way that my path started. My primary goal was to be a rogue mountain man scientist and live in the woods and study stuff. Like that's what I wanted. And it took a change in my heart towards people that happened in my early 20s that allowed me to be like, man, I should probably care about actual people and not just data. And so for the past 25 years, I've been pouring into kids, and that, they don't get older, just I do. And but I can keep serving these kids that are wobbly and learning and trying to find their way, and walking beside them is really energizing to me.
I love that. What did you major in college?
I was a biology major. I was anticipating being a fisheries biologist. I worked for the Fish and Game in the Forest Service and worked out in the biggest wilderness area in the lower 48, collecting fish data up until I decided to become a teacher. So I'm a biology first guy. And then when I decided to become a teacher, I anticipated being a biology teacher, and God just kind of laughed because in the past 25 years, I've taught, I think, 22 years of chemistry and about 5 or 6 years of biology. So I'm a chemistry teacher now.
That's so funny how those things, our plans are never quite what we expect them to be, which is
Absolutely.
so interesting. My brother-in-law works for the National Water Conservatory, and he started out, like, just collecting data, water samples all over the US. He loved it, and now he just manages people who do. So,
Yeah.
you may have ended up around people regardless. So, I'm glad you've had the opportunity to influence so many young, wobbly people,
Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
said. So that's in your career, I'm assuming you've worked with multiple different admin during that time. And so I'd be curious to hear, because one of the conversations I have with a lot of people in my inbox is just the struggles with admin. Maybe it's like their admin can't relate to them because, of course, it's very rare that an admin typically has a science teaching background. Maybe their admin are just difficult. All they care about is data. I don't know. So I'd just be curious, since you do have a lot of experience. I think you said four different admin mainly, just what that's looked like and how you've maintained relationships with admin, whether they were great or not so great.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to make some enemies here because my admin has been amazing. In 20 in 25 years, I've had four different principals, and two of them were former science teachers.
Wow, that is crazy odds.
And my current principal was one of those science teachers, and so I've been working under her for the last 12 years. So it's so half my career has been under someone who understands
Mm,
what I do. So
mhm,
I consider that a pretty big blessing for
mhm,
sure. I think one of the challenges, though, especially for us science teachers, is just valuing ourselves
mhm,
correctly, because what we do is different than what other teachers do. And we can, like, unashamedly claim that. Like, that's
mhm,
okay. That what we do is it engages more of our time.
mhm,
It takes more of us to set up labs and tear down labs and clean up and still teach the content that the other teachers are also teaching. And so to value yourself appropriately matters a lot. And to communicate that to the admin, like, this is what I need to be able to do this thing that not very many of us can do.
right,
And so I think valuing yourself, it goes a long ways to having a good perspective with admin. But like I said, I've been really spoiled in working with admin that have backed me, and but they have asked me to do hard things. I mean, I currently teach five different science classes.
mm,
I have five different preps: chemistry, honors chemistry, AP chemistry, honors biology, and AP biology. And being asked to do hard things is their job. I mean,
mhm.
they have to get it done, but we need to protect ourselves too. I was before this started, I was foolishly doing a little tally on a paper how many different classes I've been asked to teach, and the answer is 18.
And how many did you say yes to?
No, those are just the ones I've said yes to. Uh, so I've taught 18 different preps in 25 years.
Wow.
And so my admin needs to know that there's nobody else that can do what I do. And so therefore they need to protect me. They need to
Mm,
give me the margin to allow me to do what I do. And that goes for all of us science teachers. Like, we need to be protected so that we can we can do the thing that only we can do.
that's so true. And so what are some of the ways that they have created margin for you? Or, like, what are some, not necessarily like you
Yeah.
bartered with them, but said like, "Hey, I need this in order
Yeah.
to do this."
I need when first started teaching two different AP classes, which there are many of us that do that, but it is hard and it's very time consuming. I was given an extra prep period,
Good.
and that lasted all of about 2 years before it got resorbed into
They're
the
like, "You're
schedule.
doing a great job." That's the problem. You do too good, and then they're like, "You're
Yeah, yeah.
fine."
That matters. Also, just dealing with things like ordering and budgeting and all of those things. For me to go to the admin and just say, I need help doing this, and then them giving me, their assistant to come in and do the ordering, or to, manage these different things. My current admin will also give us prep days. Like, if
Mhm.
we are just swamped, we can request a sub to
Wow.
come in and cover our class, and just so that we can do the things that we need to do. So I've been in my back chemical prep room while there's a sub in my front room,
Wow.
and so that I can, do the things that I need to do.
I love that though. That's a great way that they can serve you. What has your admin done in terms of like outside of class responsibilities, like duties and clubs, and what kind of has that expectation looked like with all that you're doing with your 18
Yeah.
preps you've had?
So we're expected to do two of those right now. That's like the expectation, and I only do one.
Okay.
So they've taken one off my plate, which definitely
Makes
helps,
a difference.
for sure. Yeah,
Well, that's really helpful. I would love to hear now. Let's zoom in on those chemistry classes you teach, and then we'll talk
yeah.
about the double APs because that's insane. What tips do you have for new chemistry teachers? Especially, I'm just thinking, typically they're not going to be thrown into AP chemistry, but they may get to that point. So, maybe any tips you have specifically. I think it's just unique that you've taught all the levels. So, what advice would you have for those different levels of
Yeah.
chemistry?
I mean, I think the first bit of advice is give yourself grace.
Mm,
That yeah, teaching chemistry is challenging and it's hard, and you feel like you need to know all the answers all the time, and especially when you're new, you just won't. And be able to stand in front of the kids and say like, I don't know, I'm going to get back to you though. And
mm.
so give yourself that grace, which I was not really good at doing, because I was not supposed to be a chemistry teacher,
Right.
and my first year teaching chemistry was a little rocky, and then the next year they asked me to teach AP. So I went from 1 year of chemistry to teaching AP the next year. And that was a really hard growth curve. And I honestly failed those first year AP kids pretty hard. Like I had 14 kids in AP and one passed.
Mm,
That's how bad it was. Like it was a disaster. And that could really hamper the way you think
mhm,
about yourself and about your strengths and what you can do. And so I think number one, just give yourself grace that like it'll get better, and you stick around long enough like I have. And then we have, years in a row where it's 100% pass rate. And that's a cool thing. But you don't get there if you carry all of that pressure on your shoulders
mhm.
all the time. So
Yeah.
yeah, another one that I have used is make changes right away.
Mm,
So you have a test, and every kid has, asked the same question. Why is this wording this way? Instead of being like, "Oh, I'll remember to edit it next year," just edit it right now. Or a lab that flops, or you
mhm,
had an instruction that had too many grams of copper nitrate being put in or whatever. Go in and edit it right now, so that you can rest assured when you step into it next year that you don't have to like try to remember. Now, I know there was a problem, but what was it?
Well, and I even remember in my early years, like, getting defensive if multiple kids were asking me a question about the same test question, and then instead kind of taking what you said with the grace and being like, you know what? I'm gonna toss this question. I'm gonna rewrite it right now for next year because obviously I wrote it in a way that was so confusing that so many people keep asking me about it, and I don't want to then to be all, flustered about this one how it's worded. Like, just going ahead and saying, "Okay, it's okay. Maybe I just didn't write it well this first time. I'll fix it right now for next time." I think that's a great piece of advice.
Yeah, and I think if you hold some of those pieces with kind of open hands, like I can't help myself. I rewrite stuff every year, like and even though I've been teaching a long time, it's not like I pull out the old crusty copy from 25 years ago. It's new every year. And going back to admin, my admin was talking to me one day. I'm like, "Well, I'm rewriting a lab. I need to redo it." And she's like, "You really just can't help yourself, can you?" And it's like, "No, I can't,
Sure
because
can't.
I need to solve the problems for the kids so that they can engage at a higher level." And
Mhm.
so because it's for them, and they are different than last year's kids and they understand differently, then I need to edit and change and be better for them. And so, yeah, I keep making those changes.
I like that.
I got two more for you that are quick ones. Focus on connecting content when you're young, especially if you're teaching like two levels, chemistry and honors chemistry, or chemistry and AP chemistry, or switch over to biology. I also have taught middle school at the same time as high school, like life science and biology. So it's like, how many connections can you make so that
Mm,
reteaching doesn't have to happen?
mm.
So in that first year, you're creating those connections so that in the second year, you can reap the rewards of those connections of like, I know that I taught you how to draw Lewis dot structures.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I taught you the connections between anabolic and catabolic reactions in biology. I know that right? Like, and so you can leverage those connections that you've made with the kids. Now, truth be told, I teach in a relatively small school. We have 500 kids in the high school. And so that's a different magnitude of connection. We just had graduation, and I counted that there was only 13 kids in the whole graduating class
Wow.
that I didn't have a direct contact with, and so
Wow.
I'm teaching everybody if they take chemistry or AP chemistry or AP biology, I taught them. And so having my hands in making those connections really, really helps.
Well, and that's like the pro and con of like the con of having to teach all these different preps is that you have to teach all these different preps. The pro is that, like you said, like when my kids walked in from physical science into my biology classroom, I'm like, don't play me. Like I know
Yeah,
exactly what I taught you. Or from biology to AP
for
biology,
sure.
I'm like, don't act like you don't know what ATP is, like,
Right.
or a
Right.
protein. We've been here before.
Yeah. And they know your language, they know how you interact in the classroom. And so that, yeah, just really developing those connections is,
Hmm.
is super valuable. And the last one, and this is like me preaching to my young self, is keep work at work.
Mm.
Because when I first started, it was like I had a 2 foot tall pile of papers coming home and living on the couch, and then they migrated back to the classroom and back and forth. And what I found is I could not be present at home if my work was also present at home. It was like I had this divided heart, this divided mind. And so I made the decision years and years ago when my kids were little that if I'm at home, then I'm at home.
Hmm.
That also the downside of that is, gosh, I need to write a new test for this class. Well, that means I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to drive to school and I'm
Mm.
going to turn on my school computer. I'm going to write a test at school. Even I had a computer in my office, it would be way easier to just walk into the office and write that. But my family needed me to know that if I'm at home, I'm at home. And
Hmm.
if I'm at school, then I'm doing something that matters for school. And so creating that division would have helped my first few years for balance.
I have to ask then, how did you manage that? Because you said you teach at a small school. I'm sure parents are probably involved. How did you balance the parent dynamics of like them emailing you and them wanting to be in touch with you when you did have start setting those good boundaries? Like, did you just train the parents, like, I'm not going to respond to you this many times, or I'm only going to, look at my inbox this much? Or how did you navigate that?
Probably not well. Uh, yeah, that's hard. I think it's really hard, especially with, we're a Microsoft school, so it's like I can have Teams chats going on with my students, and then emails to the parents, and it can never end. But our school has a 24-hour deadline. So on school days, you have 24 hours to respond to parents, and that's a school expectation. So that's nice to know that I don't have to answer this at dinner
Mhm.
necessarily. And so I think there's some value in just being like, this is the time that I'm going to check those. This is the time
Mhm.
I'm going to respond. Now, do I do that perfectly? Oh, absolutely not,
Mhm.
because I also care about the kids that are teams chatting me, and I care about the parents that are
Mhm.
having a hard time, and I want the best for them. And so you just have to set some lines to be
Mhm.
able to have longevity.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about AP now. AP Bio and AP Chemistry. How are you approaching those courses? Maybe the same or different? Do you do exam prep the same? What does that look like for those two classes?
Well, what I discovered over all these years of teaching them is that teaching AP Chem and AP Bio are not the same
Mhm.
thing. AP Chemistry is coaching. I am coaching my kids to develop skills so that they can solve problems at a higher level. So my coaching mindset kicks in there, right? Like it's do reps and do training, and it's a very kind of athletic sort of system. Whereas biology is a language based system.
Mhm.
Like you need to be able to speak the language of transcription and translation. You need to
Mm.
be able to speak this language that has so many high caliber words that we're not familiar with. And so I teach them and we practice very differently. We practice language in biology and we practice skills in chemistry. And so like because of that, like in AP biology, I have a term that I coined that it's called a trigger word. I tell my kids to imagine these poor graders sitting in a room grading the same question on the AP exam over and over and over again, and kind of wanting to gouge their own eyeballs out at times with these horrible answers. And, like it's so frustrating. And our job as AP bio students is to trigger in the mind of the grader, this person knows what they're talking about. And you do that through language. You do that by using high caliber, precise scientific language. And so because of that, we practice trigger words all the time. On their test, I will give them two terms, two high caliber science terms. And their job is they have to define each of them so that I can see that they understand. And then they have to create the biological context for how those two relate. And so by practicing, like I can speak in high caliber language about this term, I can speak in high caliber language about this term, and I can put these in biological context where they matter. It just creates a system where their brain is constantly thinking, how can I use my language to communicate that I understand?
So what's an example of like two terms you would use for
Yeah,
that?
sure. Like let's do electron transport chain and oxidative phosphorylation.
Okay.
Okay. And so we know that the electron transport chain is the system that harnesses the energy to run oxidative phosphorylation. But those are really heavy words and they have so many layers. It's like, and so what we practice is, okay, the term is the electron transport chain. They have to use a high caliber science term in defining that. So I would be looking for terms in their definition like chemiosmosis or proton motive force or concentration gradient or electronegativity or I don't know, they can go a number of different ways, but they need to be including one of those highly precise, pointed words in defining the electron transport chain. And then we go to oxidative phosphorylation. Well, they sure had better mention ATP synthase in that answer, right? And then they have to create the biological context for those two. Like, how do these relate? Well, the process of the electron transport chain creates the proton motive force that allows ATP synthase to perform oxidative phosphorylation. And so now all of a sudden, kids who have practiced and practiced and practiced trigger words are now communicating precisely at a high level in few words what they mean. And so to encourage the few words on their tests, they get little boxes that are about 1.5 inches high by the width of the paper, and they have to do both definitions and the biological context inside that box. And so you have to be really efficient with your words.
Efficient, that's a good word, yeah.
And so we'll play games with that. Like I'll have a list of 6 science words, 6 trigger words for one kid, a list of 6 for the other one, and they each roll a dice. They don't even know what word. They'll each roll a die and get these 2 words, and they have to define them and connect them together. Like, how do these 2 words work? And so I have all these, practice systems where they're rolling dice and getting these new words and thinking, okay, how do I connect phospholipid bilayer to oxidative phosphorylation? Oh my goodness. Well, there is a connection because, that inner membrane is made of that, right? And so like fighting for those connections is really powerful.
I love that too, just the way you simplified it as much as say, like, in biology, it's language, and we're teaching them that we know the like, through language, we're explaining what we know, whereas chemistry is the skills. It's very interesting, and I like that.
Yeah, for sure. And so like I'm naturally a coach, like that's my heart and I enjoy coaching. And so I love coming alongside AP chemistry kids and having them do things that are over their head. Try try problems that they can't possibly get to the answer yet. And then helping them see like how far they can actually get towards the answer, and so we do an obscene number of free response questions in AP chemistry. And I lucked out. I mean, I've been teaching AP Chem since the early 2000s, and I went to the Summer Institute
Mm.
years and years and years ago, and there was an old guy. I say old guy, now I look back and I'm like, no, I'm the old guy. There was a guy like me there, and he's like, I've collected all of these AP free response questions since 1973 or
Wow.
something. And he's like, "Do you want them?" And I'm like, "Of course I do." So he gave me like 30 years of AP Chem questions that he had collected. And so now my kids are doing from like 1970 to 2026 on AP Classroom, and we have so many FRQs that we do, so that they don't get rattled, because
Mm.
the College Board's goal, and this isn't to like downplay the College Board, the College Board's goal is to put a question in front of a kid that really rattles them, that
Mm.
really makes them nervous. Like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about that. They called that thing an acid. I've never even seen that formula before in my life. I don't know what's going on. And then they'll turn around and ask a really simple question about it. And so training kids to see hard things and to be able to, to dissect, okay, yeah, there's hard content here, but really these are the things that I know and I can interpret from this. It gives them confidence then to really get to the harder things that, come later in those FRQs, the A, B, C, D, E, F, G's. By
Mhm.
you can do A, B, and C all the time.
Yes. That word rattle is so true. Like, I never taught AP Chem, but I taught AP Bio, and I remember telling them, like, "You're gonna come out of the exam and be like, 'You never taught me this.'" But that's because AP is doing that on purpose. They're gonna
Yeah.
give you data and information that you've never heard of, but you don't need to have had background info on it to apply the skills and stuff and language that you know to, like, solve the problem.
I hope this doesn't sound too crude, but I tell the kids on purpose, the goal of AP, particularly in bio, but both for chem also, the goal of that giant block of text is to make you crap your pants. Like, oh my gosh, Mr. Koch never did this. I
Yes.
have no idea what's going on.
Exactly.
And so one of the things that's I think is a really good habit that I do, it's called a 10-second story. And
Mm.
so what I do is I train my kids to look at a problem for 10 seconds, one of these FRQs or even some of these big multiple choice. Look at it for 10 seconds and tell yourself the story, including the punchline. Here is the punchline of this amazing story that they just told me. And you can't possibly in 10 seconds read all of these abbreviations and giant words that AP Bio is going to throw at you. You can't do it. But I can look at the table and I can see the story. I can look at this diagram and see, like, gosh, that looks like, and then fill in the blank what that looks like. And so I'll even have the kids do drills where
Mm.
I'll have them partner up, and I will put a graph or an FRQ table or something like that, something visual on the screen for 10 seconds while one partner has their eyes closed. And so the one partner looks and sees it for 10 seconds. Then I turn off the screen, and then they tell the one partner that looked at it tells the other one, the blindfolded one, tells them what the punchline of the story was.
Mm.
And then the second person, the blindfold person, has to tell me what was the punchline of the story.
Mm.
And so what we do, and it's shockingly strong correlation. The thing that second blindfolded person says is the first question on
Mm.
the on the free response, or connected to it. And it's like, see, look, in 10 seconds, you knew where this was going, even though College Board's trying to make you freak out. It doesn't matter. You in that 10 seconds is actually enough to get you into the context, into the mindset so that you can understand. And so doing 10-second drills is really helpful, and it helps them to not panic, and it helps them to slow down and just be like, I'm going to find the punchline. I'm looking at a cladogram, and the punchline is, wow, those two bears are really close on two different clades. Or all right, I'm looking at protein synthesis, and protein synthesis went to zero when this happened, or whatever. Like, that's the punchline. That's the exciting part of the story. Well, guess what? The question's going to be about. It's going to be
Mhm.
about that punchline. I do that in chemistry as well.
That's excellent advice. Do you have any other tips for AP teachers?
So it's gotten less, but some kids still struggle with the time limit
Mm.
on, particularly on multiple choice. And so as we're training throughout the school year, I teach them. It's a silly little system, It's called this. I just call it the smiley face system, where we rank questions, multiple choice questions, on how challenging they are.
Mm.
And so the system goes like this. You and I have them at the through the beginning of the year actually draw this on their test. A smiley face means I know that I know this answer. Like I read the question, I know that I know it. And you spend very little time on questions that you know that you know. You know that you know it, then circle the answer and move on. You don't double think and you don't redo it. Nope, I know that I know. And then the next smiley face is like a flat face,
Hmm.
and that's I know that I can figure it out. I don't know what it is, but I know that if I spent the time, I could do it. And I'm going to spend the vast majority of my AP multiple choice section on flat face smiley faces, like where it's just like I know I can figure this
Hmm.
out. Then we have frowny face, which is I know that I should know, as in Mr. Koch taught me about catabolic and anabolic, and for whatever reason, I can never remember which is which, and so I'm down to a coin flip again, and whatever the phrase is,
Mm.
and we spend only enough time to recognize the words that we know within that question.
Mm.
Because if I know that I should know it, you're going to be familiar with something in that
Hmm.
question. And so we spend less time there. And then the final smiley face is a barfy face where he's just barfing all over the place. He's like, I have no stinking idea what is happening. I don't even know what this is talking about. Mr. Koch is the worst teacher ever. He never, ever taught us this. Right. And again, we're not going to spend time on that.
Yeah.
And so what that does is by having the kids analyze through these silly little smiley faces on the side of their test, they can help pace themselves on where should I be spending my time so that when they get to that AP chemistry question that required them to balance an equation and do a limiting reagent calculation during the multiple choice section, it's okay
Right.
because we've already bought enough time through the other I know that I knows that I can spend the time to figure this out, because sometimes kids will start on a question like that and then they'll be like, oh my gosh, I've already spent so much time. I have to move on. And even though they could have gotten to the right answer, they panic themselves. Well, no, that's not what we're going to do.
So you're training them to say, okay, read it, answer the ones that are an immediate smiley, mark the others, and then circle back to those in order with like flat, frown, barf.
Yeah. And I'm not a circle back. I don't
Okay.
train them to circle back,
Okay.
mostly just because that's more time, again, trying to remember where you were going. But if you recognize right off the bat, I know that I can figure this out, then you can just chill out and breathe and get to work and do the thing, and that's okay.
Mm.
But I do have kids that circle back, of course, and that's fine. That I let them do their own, but they're not going to circle back to barfy face questions and sit there and stare and wonder
Mm.
and question and scratch their head and try to think of things that they've never thought of before.
Hmm.
Because if they know that they have no idea what it is, then don't waste your time.
Right.
Because you don't have to get 100% on the AP test to get a
Right.
5. and
So
so
true.
that's okay. The last AP like kind of tip I have for teachers is to use lab exams.
Mm.
I've switched over over the years. When I first started teaching AP chemistry, they had to do very robust, thorough write-ups for
Hmm.
every lab. Like it had the abstract and the methods and the results and the discussion and citing sources, and they would turn in rough drafts to me and then I'd give them back and we'd improve our language, and like, but it was so much effort. And now this is going to sound horrible. I don't grade AP labs.
Hmm.
The only thing that they do is they create their own digital lab book, and then at the end of the semester they take a lab final. And what
Mm.
I do is I give them, like, we have a 90-minute period. You have 3 lab adjacent questions. So it's not just redo the same lab that you did.
Hmm.
It's like, here's something that's similar. Let me give you an example for AP Bio. Like one of the first AP Bio labs is like an osmosis one where you're figuring out, you know, how these cells are gaining or losing weight or whatever. And then on the lab final, they had to figure out what percent dissolved solid are Orbeez, those little squishy bullets that
Mm.
shoot out of the gun. And it's like, well, we didn't ever do Orbeez, but I've done something like that. And the only thing that they can use on their lab exam is their digital lab notebook. And everybody does it individually. So every kid has to to maintain their own digital lab notebook because they don't know which lab I'm going to be testing them
Right.
on. And that becomes a very large portion of their grade. At our school, we're an 80-20
Hmm.
school, so 80% is summative, and this is one of the biggest summative tests of the year. So you're flirting with a large percent of your grade relying on how well did I record what I did and how well did I understand what I did, so that I can replicate it. And so it's super valuable to save yourself some time because when you're prepping 5 different science classes like I am currently, I don't have time to go through with a fine-tooth comb and
Yeah.
grade five different labs for all these different levels. I just don't. And so at the AP level, they know they're having a lab final. Now I do give them points. I'm a like I said before, I'm a coach. I'm a competitive person. We compete for points at the AP level, and I know this. Not everybody agrees with this philosophy, but if we're doing a percent yield in chemistry, right? Like the correct percent yield is 100% yield. And so the group that gets the highest percent yield will get the highest grade on the lab. And the
Mm.
group that gets the lowest percent yield will get the lowest grade on the lab. And so in their formative work, right, like on the 20% side at our school, are these lab grades that are based on performance only.
Mm.
Like did you win? You know? and so it increases the level of concern in the classroom. They know that they have to record everything in their digital notebook because this could be on their final. And they know that they have to beat the team next to them. So we're going to rinse extra with deionized water and we're going to pay attention. We're going to remember to weigh the filter paper when it's dry and not
Right.
not guess after we've weighed it and it's wet, right? We're gonna increase our concern about those things because if I do the best, I get the best score.
Right. The precision matters.
Totally.
What does that look like at the, like, more on grade level or honors
Yeah.
level? Like, how do you grade labs or just handle labs at those levels?
Yeah. So my grade level labs are, they'll have a usually like a worksheet, like there's something they're filling out as they're doing it. It'll have 3 or 4 follow-up questions on it, and one of those questions will be on their test
Mm.
or one like it or the calculation. So let's say we're doing a specific heat, right? Specific heat of an unknown metal lab in grade level science.
Mhm.
Well, they know that on their test, I'm going to describe a lab in which they have to figure out what metal it is. And so that again relieves my need to grade every single part of every single lab because the understanding will come out on the test. Now,
Mm.
they do have to complete all their tables. They do have to show all their work. They do have to answer the 4 or 5 follow-up questions that each lab includes to make sure that their understanding can communicate what they did. But again, I'm not going to stress on going through each lab group's calculation of, oh, did they actually do the calculation right? Because I'll find out on the 80% side of their grade when they take their test if
Right.
they know it. And that also relieves that feeling of, oh my goodness, a kid was gone. He missed a lab. And so am I supposed to set up a late lab? Do they have to come after school to redo that? Nope, because the scoring of that actual lab is very minimal,
Mm.
but the skills are required on the test. And so that means you better come with me and I'll explain how the lab works, or you better get with your normal lab partner and have them explain how it goes so that you can do the math because you're going to be held responsible for that.
That's great. Well, you've mentioned a couple of different things that you do in your classroom that are like gamified, and you talked about the competitive nature and the point. So we've got to talk about games because
Yeah.
that is definitely a part of your classroom culture. So I'd love to hear more about games and how you use them and how you would combat the argument that games are a waste of time that some people would say.
Yeah.
Because you obviously know that time is of the essence with the different classes that you teach.
100%. I love games. I've always been a competitive person, and I love board games and sports and all the things. I thrive in that world. And so from early on in my chemistry teaching, I was creating games to play in the classroom, and it was like oftentimes early on it was like, okay, kids, we're gonna make cards, and I have little scraps of paper, and okay, you guys make atom cards. You're going to write down elements, and you over here make proton, neutron, electron cards, and you're just going to write on these scraps of paper, and then we're going to play a matching game or, whatever it is. But what I noticed early on in doing just simple little scraps of paper type games like that is the conversations that kids have get deeper
Mhm.
faster. Because if I'm making the element card and I make the carbon element card, and you're supposed to make the proton, neutron, electron card, and you write 8 protons on that, then all of a sudden we have a conversation of
Mhm.
like, no, 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 that's not the right number. Like, look, you have to choose this number. This is the atomic number. That's the number of protons. And that's not me doing that. That's the kids doing that. And so I started to see that like, wow, they have different conversations when something's on the line. Now we're
Mm.
playing the game and we're trying to win, and somebody's trying to sneak it, trying to play a card that's not playable, and they're arguing over whatever it is. Those are really valid and valuable conversations about the content. And so in like 2019, I decided finally, I'm like, you know what, I should just formalize this and actually turn one of my scraps of paper games into a real game. And so I started Stoich decks, and I did a Kickstarter on for my first game, and got a few people to back it, and got scraped together enough money to make it. And I'm like, this is going to be so awesome. I'm going to make a game that's for use in classrooms, and kids will be playing my game. And I sent it to the factory to be made, and that's called spring of 2020. And so then the whole world shuts down.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh no, now nobody's even in a classroom. This is
Right.
pointless. And it was so hard. And so it took a while then to come out of that whole era and get back to the classroom and see that, wow, kids really do engage with these games at a different level. This is not a worksheet where they're asking, what answer did you get?
Mm.
Because I can ask, what answer did you get? And you say 3 times 10 to the 23rd atoms. And I write on my paper 3 times 10 to the 23rd atoms. And I didn't engage my brain at all.
Right.
But if we're playing a card game, and we're trying to figure out who has the most atoms, and you're only going to win if you play a card with the most atoms, and you're playing 12 grams of carbon, and I'm playing 12 grams of helium. Well, do we have the same? And like, is that the same? Well, no, it's not the same number of atoms. And then the kids have this conversation. No, because helium has less mass, that's more atoms. That's 3 moles of atoms. So I fell in love with watching kids have those intentional, controlled conversations about the content that I was teaching, and I just kept going. And I just a couple of weeks ago launched my 5th game that's designed specifically to be in chemistry classrooms, so that kids have opportunities to have these conversations and to have competition. And so there are days in my class where the only lesson plan is, we are playing this game, and you're going to break up into your tables, and you're going to get 6 kids around a table, and you're playing this card game, and you're having these conversations. And those conversations and that learning is more than I could get out of a lecture plus a worksheet.
That's awesome.
And so I just keep I just keep going now, and it's super valuable.
I love it. I just feel like you have so much creativity to create these games, and, I'm gonna link them in the show notes for everyone listening, but also just I think your whole website, you have a great blog that I feel like you write some excellent content on, so everyone needs to check it out for more support. How many games do you have up here that you need to execute?
I In my head is a lot. I am an idea guy, and it drives my wife crazy because literally I just cleaned off the kitchen table because there's prototypes all over the kitchen table, because it's like, ooh, it's summer now, I can just think about creating more games. And
It's awesome.
uh and and so I had to clear off the table so that we could eat. But I'm an idea guy, and so it doesn't really.
The limit does not exist.
No, because I just want to solve problems,
Right.
right? Like, I want to make it so that teachers who are struggling with hard things have a way to engage kids in a way that is deeper and more fun, and
Mhm.
more light, and less teacher centric because
Mm.
now the kids are having these conversations around their board games, around their card games, rather than me having to kind of browbeat them. So yeah, so the games they're still going. Yeah, on my website you mentioned there is a lot of stuff on there. I have tried to be disciplined during the school year, and I write a new blog every Friday. I think I have close to 150 articles on there that you can search that are, it's mostly chemistry because my games are chemistry oriented, but just chemistry or teaching related. And then I have a bunch of resources just that are just like free on there for, reference sheets and labs and
Mhm.
whatever I think of, I put on there. So
Well, what I'm hearing is that you were really meant to be a chemistry teacher since you love to solve problems, and all chemistry is problem solving. So
yeah,
I think it all worked out.
I think that's true.
Okay, but before I let you go, I just have a few like rapid fire questions to wrap it up because I just like to ask everyone just to hear lots of different opinions on this. So, first, do you have like one classroom management technique or hack you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think this isn't a hack. There is no magic bullet.
People just love that word. You're so right. People want a hack, and there's not always a hack.
There isn't, because every classroom is made of 30 humans that have 30 individual problems. And so my hack, quote unquote, for classroom management is to create a culture of striving. And I use that phrasing in my class. The culture of this classroom is striving. It's not
Mm,
perfection, but it's moving forward. And so if your whole mindset is chemistry, AP biology, these science classes are hard, but our attitude towards them is always going to be putting one foot in front of the other, and we're going to work hard. And I, as your teacher, am going to work so hard to make it work for you.
mm,
If they feel that connection, then they know, okay, I'm in this room. It's really hard, and I have this decision to make because my own sinful heart wants to be, off topic and doing wrong things, right? Like that's where I naturally go. But if the culture of the room is striving, then those people who move off center, away from where they should be, culturally feel ostracized rather
mm,
than being given attention. They're they're looked at like, man, what are you doing? That's not what this team does
mm,
here. And so that comes at a cost to me because I tell kids, I will do whatever it takes to help you succeed. And that means in 25 years, I can count on like my hands how many times I've eaten in the teacher's lounge. I
mm,
I don't I eat lunch in my room every single day. I'm in my room early every single day. And my door is open to kids every single day.
mm,
And so it's not unusual for me to have, I mean, from 2 to 20 kids in my room
mm,
at lunch because the culture is striving.
mhm.
And so if if you develop that culture of striving early, it takes care of so many like behavior
Yeah.
problems. Just one story. I've taught both of my sons in honors chemistry and AP chemistry, and my older son in his class, there was a kid who was a turkey. Right, he was always getting in trouble. He was getting kicked out of classes, and he was a troublemaker. But he wasn't in the same period as my son, and so my son is watching him in Spanish class just get kicked out every day, and just this fight. And my son comes to me, he's like, "Dad, what does this kid do in your class?" I'm like, "He's great."
Mhm.
He's like, "No, no, like what naughty things does he do?" I'm like, "He doesn't
Mm,
because the culture is striving. And if he did, then he would feel so out of place because that's not the culture of this room." And so he does great. And
mm,
and that was like eye-opening to my son, like, "Oh, there's a different culture in this classroom versus that classroom." And I think if you hold those culture building activities, if you hold those tightly, then man, so many of those problems just take care of
fall into
themselves.
place. It's so
Yeah.
true. Okay, well, this is culture adjacent. How do you handle cell phones, and how do you handle AI? Is that a problem in your classroom?
Cell phones aren't a big problem. Our school is the school rule is they can't be seen
Okay.
at school. And so yeah, if I see one, I take it and I turn it into the office and they pay their fine and whatever.
Right.
Like it's already in place. So that's not a huge deal to me. And AI is tricky in that if I just put all my points on homework and then they can go home and take a photo and put it into the chat and get the answers, then their grade is not accurately measuring what they know and are able to do. So my homework is worth minimal points. They have to do it in order to. We're also, our school is also a retake school. So on
Mm.
tests, we offer retakes. But if you don't have all of your homework and your practice tests completed, then you don't get the opportunity to retake. So that helps hold that standard high. And then I do live in class quizzes that are all pop quizzes.
Mm.
And I literally write all my quizzes on the board. I don't have a piece of paper that can be texted around. And so every quiz is different in between each period. So when kids walk into the class, there's usually 3 warm-up questions on the board. I do a past, a present, a future question. So to help them get their momentum for the day. Like, what did we learn yesterday is my past. What are we covering today is my today. And then can you guess about how to solve this future problem?
Mm.
And so we work through that every day. And then some days I'm like, okay, take out a blank piece of paper. We're going to take a quiz that looks just like those questions. And I rewrite those questions on the board
Um,
and they take it. So there's no AI interface that lets them cheat this random question that I haven't made
right.
until the moment that my hand hits the whiteboard.
That's awesome.
And I don't do a lot of take home work.
Right.
So AI hasn't been a big issue for me is negatively for sure. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, the last question I have to ask you is the one I end every episode with, and it is, what is one way that you're simplifying your life right now?
Yeah. I was trying to figure out how to phrase this. Live by the tyranny of the alarm clock. I do a lot of things. I'm a busy person. I'm teaching 5 different preps, and I design games, and I run my game company, and I also am an author, and I write. And so my alarm clock goes off at 4:40 a.m.
Huh.
And from 4:40 until I go to school, it's quiet in the house. And so I've just created this discipline that allows me to get up and I on Mondays I write a Substack article. On Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday I write a book. On Friday I write a blog for Stoich decks, and then I can fill in those some of those times with fulfilling orders and managing my games and all that stuff, managing with the factory and all those
Hmm.
kinds of fun things. But if you live by the tyranny of the alarm clock, it simplifies because I know that from 4:40 a.m. till 7 a.m. or whenever I have to go to school, that time is created and set aside to accomplish these goals. And it's so easy to hit snooze, and
Mm.
it's so easy to be like, oh, I worked hard today. I'm not getting up tomorrow. But one of our admin challenged us to create healthy habits. And so 3 years ago, I said, I'm going to live by the tyranny of the alarm clock. And that simplified my life of being able to know, like, this is how and when I'm going to
Hmm.
apply this. And gosh, you get a lot more done when you live by that tyranny. So,
And you're obviously a morning person. When do you go to bed?
well, when would I like to go to bed? Is that what you said? uh,
What's your goal?
yeah. My wife is a night owl and I'm a morning person, but I also have to give my energy to her. And so
Mhm.
we, are taking our walks with the dog and doing all the family things. And, I'm trying to get in bed by 10, but we'll see if that actually works.
Wow.
And then we just get up and do it again. But live by the tyranny of the alarm clock.
I love it.
It's helpful.
I use alarms or timers all the time just when I start a project. Like, I'll decide
Mm,
I should not spend more than 20 minutes writing this quiz. So I'm just going to set a timer. And when this goes off, like, I'm going to wrap it up, or else I can
yeah,
just keep the creative part of me just wants to keep going and going and going. So I
for
don't know if
sure.
I could do 440 though. That's pretty disciplined. I'm impressed. Well, Brennan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I learned so much. I was like, I kept looking down because I was scribbling things that you said down that I don't want to forget. So I really appreciate you sharing your time and wisdom with listeners. Would the best way for people to find you be just stoichdecks.com, or is there another way to reach out to you?
Yeah, that's the best. That's where I'm the most active. I don't do much on social media and stuff. There's not a lot of time left in the day for
Yeah.
that. So
Then you'd have to get up at 3:40. So we
yeah,
can't be doing
that
that.
doesn't work. Yeah, stoichdecks.com, and there's like a free download game there, like a print and play game, and then that puts you on my email list so that we can stay in touch. And then I have an email, stoichdecks@gmail.com, that you can reach out. And so I did put together like a coupon code for
Yes.
listeners of Secondary Science Simplified. And so if they go to stoichdecks.com and use code ROCKET, then they can get 20% off any of those games. And we have games over counting atoms and moles and periodic trends and creating ionic bonds and metric units. And yeah, it's all there, and they can go and check it out at stoichdecks.com and
This
then
is
use
so exciting.
code ROCKET. Yeah, it's great.
This is the first time I've ever had a special coupon code for anything. So I feel so excited.
And I went with Rocket,
I love
so that
it.
it's all on theme. So
I love it. Well, thank you so much. That was super generous. And I hope we get to connect again in the future. This was great.
yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode and my conversation with Brennan. You can find all the links mentioned in the show notes at itsnotrocketscienceclassroom.com/episode 243. If you are listening and you are now excited to utilize games or maybe just to approach how you teach AP differently this school year, please leave a rating and a review for the podcast. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget, the first ever exclusive It's Not Rocket Science and Secondary Science Simplified coupon code is here for you. You can use code ROCKET at checkout at stoichdecks.com for 20% off. All right, teacher friends, that wraps up today's episode. If you're looking for an easy way to start simplifying your life as a secondary science teacher, head to itsnotrocketscienceclassroom.com/challenge to grab your classroom reset challenge. And guess what? It's totally free. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you here next week. Until then, I'll be rooting for you, teacher friend.